So welcome back to Favorite Friday. For the last case for this week, we are going back to Ohio, specifically apparently Hanover, Ohio. This case has a lot of trial footage available on YouTube. So I would imagine it's at least somewhat of a well-known case. Of course, if you've never heard of this case, I definitely understand because it had been a minute before I'd even heard of this case. If anybody is from Ohio and you knew of anybody involved in the case, as always, let me know. I'm gonna give what is publicly known because there is at least somewhat more of what is publicly known than I normally cover in these cases. So this video might be a little bit longer. And so with that being said, sources in the description box as always. And I'm gonna quit my rambling and let's go and get started. So Hannah Welsh was born on July 11, 2015 to Adrian Latham and Jason. And so the mother, Adrian, she was born on August 18th, 1988. Hannah apparently was in the NICU, so the newborn intensive care unit, for 92 days because her mother apparently was a heroin addict. And obviously when you do drugs while pregnant, it's going to affect the fetus because the fetus is literally relying on you. And then of course, with Adrian, the mother, doing drugs, custody of Hannah essentially goes to Jason because I guess apparently Adrian and Jason had split at one point. So then Jason apparently was working at a job for 2 years. Didn't specify what the job was, but he had lose his job that he had for 2 years. He would have Hannah go stay at his brother's house so that way she could have a place to sleep so she's not sleeping in the car. Because obviously he wanted better for his daughter. So I'm gonna sleep in the car, but you go sleep, go stay at your uncle's house, essentially. And then he would eventually get a construction job working 12 hours a day. And at the time of our story, Hannah's 3 years old. So obviously she can't stay by herself. Somebody needs to watch her. So then he gets a babysitter, and the babysitter's name is Sandy. Sorry, the babysitter's name is Sandy, but apparently she lived too far away, it was too far of a drive. Didn't specify how far the drive was, but it was too far of a drive. So then he eventually talks to apparently his next door neighbor, Lindsay Pardon, and apparently she was also the wife of a coworker of his. So that's how he found out that she was babysitting. So Lindsay Melissa Pardon was born September 16th, 1982. And then for background regarding children, apparently she had an associate's degree in pre-childhood education. So then Lindsay, apparently she was married and had 2 daughters of her own while also taking care of Hannah, who like I said, was 3. Apparently Jason only had to pay $30 a day. So not only is she right next door, but also she was apparently very affordable because most babysitters, I think, charge a lot more than that. But I guess she felt bad. I think there was a special rate. She was I only charge you $30. However, despite the only paying $30 a day, Jason was somehow still behind these payments. And so she would say that it was cool. Apparently, Hannah would start coming back to the house because remember, she was living under the custody of Jason. She would come back to the house with bruises, and Lindsay always seemed to somehow have an explanation for that. So in December of 2017, Lindsay basically calls Jason and tells him hey, your daughter slipped on a blanket and she hit her head on concrete. And so I had to rush her to urgent care. So, of course, Jason, being the dad that he is, he also is very concerned. And then she proceeds to lie and tell him that, oh, I lied to them and told them that she was my daughter. So that way the insurance can cover it. Because obviously, if this ain't my kid and you over struggling to pay me $30 a day, and I'm assuming you ain't got insurance on this child, you're going to be struggling to pay these bills. So I lied and said she's my kid so that way insurance should cover most of it. Because they normally cover most of it, not all of it. Basically take the financial burden off him since he's a single dad. So then, of course, then at another point, apparently, Hannah would have 2 black eyes and a swollen nose. And apparently her Google search from the day that she called Jason, basically saying that, hey, your daughter slipped on the blanket. Apparently it said how to take care of a toddler who might have concussion. We don't know exactly when she made that search, but I thought that was pretty interesting to mention. And then apparently it would later come out that none of them had been to the doctor since November 2016. So then in February 2018, apparently Lindsay was pregnant at this time. And so then, unfortunately, at 14 weeks, she would have her second miscarriage. So it didn't specify when the first miscarriage was, but apparently this is the second one. And so then apparently she was very stressed and going through emotions because of the miscarriage, which is understandable. So on the fateful day of March 8th, 2018, Jason pretty much drops off Hannah right before 7 a.m. So we doing this shit early. And then apparently he would drive away. He switches from the personal truck to the work truck. Because also you're going to the job. I guess they gave him a work truck with the job. Which, I guess that was not. And then while he's doing all this, he then sees he has a missed call from Lindsay. So, of course, he calls her back. Because, you have my daughter. There's probably something going on with her. So, then she proceeds to tell them, oh, well, Hannah passed out. So, then, of course, she proceeds to call 911 and says, look, Hannah basically hit her head. Hannah basically had slipped on a toy and had hit her head the day before. Then apparently another thing they add from the day before is that apparently she had searched up how to get rid of bruises at 8:48 in the morning and then deletes it from her search history at 2:56 p.m. And then she also searched up like what essential oils are good for bruises and is vapor rub effective on bruises. So then of course paramedics arrive and Lindsay essentially tells them that okay, she asked for a donut, then proceeded to ask me for a donut, and then sat on my couch after Jason, her dad, had left, and then apparently she had collapsed after taking off her coat. Then the same day, Lindsay's also questioned because like you're the last person that's pretty much to be seen with her, so we need to figure out what's going on. So then Hannah is still alive at this point, of course, but they lie and tell her that Hannah dies. I guess try to get like, if you did something to her, it'll basically get her to slip and like confess, like out of guilt. And then Lindsay's still sticking her story, saying, like she's denying what happened and saying that it took 7 minutes from Jason to get to his front door to my front door, even though we're literally next door neighbors. So she comes back to the station the next day. Doesn't say whether she was called or she decided to come back herself. However, she does decide to stick to the story. She's, of course, shown pictures of Hannah's bruises. She says that, me and Hannah went on nature walks, and I guess basically saying that Hannah, being a toddler, of course, was basically clumsy, and she basically did those injuries to herself. So then they're saying, okay, well, the injuries that Hannah has are injuries where she shouldn't be able to walk. So how are y'all able to go on nature walks if baby girl couldn't even walk? So then Lindsay proceeds to say that Hannah has slipped on a blanket and then passed out. So the detectives apparently are like challenging, basically saying that, they're kind of like showing doubt. They don't believe this version. So then she's saying that, okay, I was carrying Hannah in, we both fell, and Hannah hit her. And then in this version, apparently this is where apparently she regains consciousness and then goes and sits on the couch and then asks for a donut like nothing happened. So then she changed the story again and tells police that basically Hannah was like dropped, but not like intentionally. So then the police are telling her that it's like inconsistent with what we found and like forensic evidence. So then apparently Lindsay decides to finally confess and says that she was disciplining Hannah. However, apparently she had permission from her dad, Jason. So the detectives then proceeds to show her like some photos, and then Lindsay decides to finally tell detectives, well, apparently Hannah had like basically like squirted all of the ketchup into her toilet, and that Lindsay apparently had responded by sitting her down and like slapping her. And then on top of that, she added that she apparently punched Hannah under the chin repeatedly, and then she decides to ask for a lawyer after telling them this information. So the detectives ask, because they're trying to figure out, you just confessed to abusing this girl who literally is fighting for her life over here. They ask, well, did you hit Hannah basically like you're mad at her mom, so you hit Hannah? Because remember, Hannah's mom, Adrian, was an addict, and you basically were pissed because Hannah's mom, she got to have her kid, even the kid was in the NICU for like 92 days. She got to have a kid, whereas by this point, apparently they knew that Lindsay had at least 2 miscarriages. They're like, basically, are you pissed that Adrian got to have a child and you didn't? So one of the male detectives even tells her, like, hey, me and my wife, we're struggling to conceive a child ourselves. Now, whether or not that's actually true, it didn't say, but apparently I believe that he said that to her just to try to be relatable so she can keep on talking. Because she had already said something, but apparently I guess like it wasn't enough to arrest her at this point. And so then apparently she gives them permission to go through her phone, because that's what they had asked, and she said yeah. So then they go through the message with her husband, and they see that they're apparently having problems. And then apparently he had asked if he was taking her anger out on the children, which I guess that was like a concern that he had. And they then ask her, are you suffering from postpartum depression? And then apparently she said big time. So then Lindsay tells them that she had picked Hannah up and squeezed her and then shook her. And then by this point, they pretty much had explanation for like all the injuries on her except the one that apparently put her in the hospital. Lindsay, of course, is still consistent, saying, look, she fell, hit her head on the concrete. So then Lindsay, by this point, apparently Hannah's already dead, so she's charged with murder, manslaughter, and 4 counts of endangerment of a child. So rewind a bit to where Hannah did go to the hospital. So she gets to the hospital, and they see that she has a hemorrhage in both eyes, and apparently a subdural hemorrhage, which obviously that sounds like very serious. So then they apparently lift her to a children's hospital because she's 3, so I guess they got to do something different if you're a child. And they got to drain the fluid from her. They have to drain some fluid from her so that way she could have like emergency surgery. However, unfortunately, they were not successful, and she was taken off life support on the 18th. So then now, of course, Hannah has passed. Jason would put up a GoFundMe, and 10 grand was raised. So then at trial, as you can imagine, Lindsay changed her story again and basically tried to say the police manipulated me. There was some stuff that I confessed to them before I asked for a lawyer, so that should have been like thrown out. And apparently she was coerced. And then her defense team basically tries to blame Jason. They even tried to ask Jason, where were you at the night of March 7th? He says, I went to Walmart to go get milk for Hannah so she can have cereal for dinner, because apparently she wanted cereal for dinner. And they go to Walmart looking for surveillance. They couldn't find surveillance of him. The milk itself was not in the house. There was no receipt. So then he says, okay, well, look, I had a friend over and from what it looks like, he says I dropped him off. So I'm assuming that's what happened. But yeah. So then Jason, of course, would testify at trial because, of course, they're asking him what's going on. And he would say that, oh, Hannah had complained of headaches like 3 weeks prior to the fateful day of March 8th. Apparently, he wasn't even aware that she had hepatitis C, and that hepatitis C apparently could cause severe bruising. And so defense is over here trying to take all the blame off Lindsay and just throw it on Jason and say that, oh, maybe all those bruises that Hannah got, he gave to her when he was backing out of the driveway whenever he would come pick her up. So then, of course, Lindsay, of course, she's found guilty on the murder, involuntary manslaughter, and 4 counts of endangerment of a child, and she's sentenced to life with possibility of parole up to 18 years. So then apparently 6 months after the trial, Lindsay and her husband, TJ, they divorced. TJ actually would get arrested for apparently raping a child under the age of 10. He gets charged with 2 counts of rape and 4 counts of gross sexual imposition on someone under the age of 10. So then, of course, he takes the classic Alfred plea, basically saying, look, I didn't do it. Like, I'm saying I'm innocent, but y'all got enough evidence to put me in jail, so yeah. And so then, of course, he gets a charge of aggravated assault, and all the other charges somehow dropped. So it was a plea deal, because they really didn't go to him. They mostly was talking about Lindsay and understanding Lindsay's situation. And so he is currently out on bond until sentencing. And at the time of this video, I've not seen him be sentenced. So I guess it was safe to assume that he is still out. So then Lindsay tries to throw her now ex-husband under the bus, saying that, oh, TJ was there when Jason dropped Hannah off, and that I lied and said TJ was not there, essentially to protect him because that was her husband at the time. But now that we divorced, I'm throwing your ass under the bus. So whether or not he was actually there, it doesn't say. As you can imagine, Lindsay does try to appeal to the Ohio Supreme Court, basically try to get her, I guess, her sentence lightened, if not overturned. Of course, that gets denied. She's obviously still in jail. And unfortunately, Adrian, who remembers Hannah's mother, she would unfortunately die. She died on May 1st, 2023 at only 34 years old. Now, exactly what she had died from, we don't know. Of course, there's people saying that she died from, overdose of drugs because she was an addict, but of course, I'm not going to just assume. And I'm not going to ask because I feel like that's kind of like disrespectful considering we're really focused on the 3-year-olds here. And so, yeah, that's the case of Hannah Was She. If anybody has any similar cases to this, definitely let me know. I cover favorite females every week. Subscribe for more favorite females, and I'll see you guys with the next one. Bye.